Specific Learning Disabilities by Shelley Ellert. Definition. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, defines SLD as a disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in understanding or in using language, spoken or written, that may manifest itself in the imperfect ability to listen, think, speak, read, write, spell, or do mathematical calculations. A specific learning disability, or SLD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder caused by genetic and environmental factors during the brain's development. It can also be caused from a brain injury or issues during early childhood development, such as malnutrition, abuse, or fetal alcohol syndrome, or other factors during fetal development. The brain has difficulty in accurately perceiving both verbal and nonverbal information correctly, which creates an inability to process and react appropriately to information given. This is a disability of perception. A child with SLD may hear a set of instructions, for example, pick up your pencil, write your name on your paper, then turn your paper over, but they may miss part of the instruction and appear that they are not listening, while they are still stuck on the instruction to pick up the pencil, not knowing what to do with it. Common difficulties with reading, called dyslexia, writing, called dysgraphia, listening, speaking, reasoning, and math, called dyscalculia. We often hear the term dyslexia to describe a person who inverts their letters when they attempt to read, making it very difficult to decipher the text. While this is true, this is incomplete. Dyslexia is a term that literally means impaired word from Greek translation. It is characterized by poor word recognition, poor spelling, and difficulties with decoding, which is the ability to apply knowledge of letter-sound relationships, including knowledge of letter patterns, to correctly pronounce written words. Understanding these relationships gives children the ability to recognize familiar words quickly and to figure out words they haven't seen before. Dysgraphia is closely linked with dyslexia. A child cannot create the proper letters to form the phonemes to make words. They have great difficulty translating what is in their heads to words on paper. The lack of ability to listen is closely tied to their inattention and inability to accurately perceive what is being said. They also struggle to verbalize their thoughts, ideas, and emotions. Those with SLD have difficulty with scenarios that require perception. They have difficulty with recognizing, comparing, and discriminating information, so their ability to reason is diminished. Dyscalculia is the specific problems with mathematics. Those with SLD have trouble with size and spatial relationships, place value, fractions, decimals, including money, time, and remembering math facts. They also struggle with the steps involved in solving equations and the order of operations. Solving word problems is also very challenging. A child with dyslexia cannot make sense of the written words, often omitting, condensing, substituting, reversing, or displacing words as they attempt to read. They often fabricate words they know rather than attempt to sound the words out because the task is overwhelming to them. Characteristics of dysgraphia are avoidance of written work. It takes them significant amounts of time to create a simple written expression. This example took the student 20 minutes of writing to create a simple little paragraph. Technical errors are abundant, such as lack of punctuation, capitalization, and improper grammar, word usage, and sentence structure, and their sentences are incomplete and they omit words. Dyscalculia is the impairment of arithmetic skills, including computation and the ability to represent and retrieve basic mathematic facts from long-term memory. There are 4 groups of skills that are poorly achieved, including linguistic skills, understanding the terms in math and converting written problems into algorithms, perceptual skills, understanding symbols and ordering clusters of numbers, understanding, using, and remembering basic add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and attentional skills, which is a skill needed to accurately copy equations and observe the correct use of symbols. Here are some facts. Some signs of SLD typically appear in early elementary school. It is common for a child with SLD to struggle in more than one skill set, although not necessarily true. They can struggle with just one area. Nearly half of all students with disabilities have SLD. Teachers and parents may suspect that their child has a deficit if their child is not making adequate progress to meet age or grade level standards in one or more of the psychological educational skills listed on the previous slides. Often a child who struggles in reading also struggles with writing, and a child who struggles with speech also struggles with listening. Likewise, a child who struggles with reasoning may also struggle with mathematics. However, any combination of two or more of these may be present. According to the U.S. Department of Education, SLD is a high incidence disability, meaning that of all the disabilities, approximately 48% fall in this category. Here are more facts. SLD is not an indication that a child is dumb or lazy, only that their brains process information differently. SLD does not stem from visual, hearing, or motor disabilities, or of intellectual, emotional disability, or of environmental, cultural, or economic disadvantage. And no two children with SLD will have the same profile of strengths and weaknesses. A person with SLD may actually have normal to high IQ. The fact that their brains process information differently means that they have to compensate for their learning differences. The digesting of language takes them longer and requires more skills for them to respond appropriately, but they are capable of learning and being successful in life. SLD is not an impairment of motor, visual, or auditory function, nor is it an intellectual disability such as mental retardation. It is not caused by an emotional dysfunction or mental illness, and it is not the result of economic, environmental, or cultural circumstances. Interestingly, SLD is heterogeneous, meaning that no two students will have an identical learning profile. The characteristics vary greatly, and the severity among children also has a wide range. This poses a particular challenge for educators. The psychological processes are the thinking skills necessary for processing and learning information. Perception is the ability to organize and interpret visual and auditory information and other sensory channels. Children with SLD often struggle to take cues from their environment. Attention is vital to learning because an inability to focus appropriately will inhibit a student's performance on tasks in and out of the classroom, leaving him perpetually behind the other students in his grade level. The area of working memory is also affected and affects their ability to store information and retrieve it later from long-term memory. Metacognition is the ability to assess one's own performance. In other words, a person with a lack in this area does not appear to learn from experience. They struggle to generalize information, and they cannot apply learned material because they don't know how to do that. They also have a hard time adapting to new environments, materials, and situations. Organization is another key component in learning. Without the ability to organize, a student is constantly in chaos and cannot settle their thought processes or their tangible work, classwork, or learning environment. Social and emotional development. The difficulties that a child may have with reading, writing, and mathematics can also spill over into their emotional development. They may not be able to interpret social cues, and they may have immature social skills. Impulsivity may also interfere with their ability to form healthy relationships because they often do not think about consequences to their behaviors. Most students with SLD can be successful in a regular education classroom setting. The key is to have scaffolding in place for them to be able to stay on task, accomplish the work, and learn the material. For some students who have several deficits in their skill set, and depending on the severity of their disability, it may be helpful to have a separate time or location for their learning during the day, although it is not advisable to remove the child altogether from a regular classroom with their peers. Children will often rise to a higher level if they are exposed to learners of all levels. Teachers will have to employ differentiation in their instruction to facilitate learning for all students. In addition, other students may serve as tutors and helpers for those with SLD. Especially for younger children, having the teacher model the desired response or method can go a long way in helping the child understand what he needs to do and how he needs to do it. Chunking is another way to help students learn information in smaller doses. They can then link the information and make connections. Using both verbal and written prompts will help students stay on tasks. This also helps the student become more independent. Repetition, such as chanting the steps in an equation or rules of grammar, is another way to solidify information and gives them a backup when the teacher is not available to refresh their memory. Teaching a child to look at pictures, read titles, chapter headings, and find key words will help them with their comprehension and reading. This also helps activate their prior knowledge so they can make connections to the material. Self-monitoring is a way for students to assess their own understanding. They read a passage and then they rephrase it in their own words. A study guide is often very useful to help students ensure they are extracting the right information. Strategies for instruction also includes intervening early in writing and math assignments. The teacher with students who have SLD in their classrooms need to pay close attention to their students in order to catch them early in their production of written work and math calculations. This will alleviate stress for the student who is stuck. However, it is important not to hover, but to find a balance between giving needed support and letting the child struggle to learn. Often children will come up with their own solutions, so struggling some is helpful, but if they are going down a rabbit hole, it is important for the teacher to put them back on track. The teacher can point out visual cues, charts, and encourage the use of notes to help the student stay on task. Graphic organizers are especially helpful for students with SLD because it helps them to organize their thoughts and lets them see how various pieces of the lesson coordinate. This is a very useful strategy in helping them to become stronger readers and writers. The T-chart helps them contrast and compare. The sequence chart helps them see the chronological relationship of an idea. The concept map lets them order things according to importance or hierarchy. The main idea web lets them see how things are related, but also teaches them about subcategories. And the Venn diagram helps them to see similarities and differences between two or more groups of things. Giving the child access to technology such as tablets, calculators, and computers will enhance their ability to learn. Text-to-speech software, audiobooks, screen reading software, graphical word processors, auditory word processing software, among others, are software that aids a student in reading and writing assignments. These tools make language more accessible and intelligible. When a child feels successful, they will flourish. Having charts displayed in the classroom or allowing them to have a chart in their notebook or on their desk to help them stay focused and find pertinent information is also a very helpful tool. Some argue that the use of such tools creates a lazy student, but for the student with SLD, they need to have means to compensate for their learning differences. If a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. Ignacio Estrada. According to the U.S. Department of Education, in a class of 20 students, approximately 4 students will have an individualized education plan, an IEP. Most of these students will be labeled with specific learning disabilities. What this means for teachers is that we need to get serious about differentiation in our instruction. When a teacher attempts to reach every learner on his or her level and offer scaffolding to help those who struggle, those children will do things that will surprise us all. Tom Cruise, Julia Roberts, Robin Williams, Michael Phelps, Cher, Bill Gates, Muhammad Ali, Walt Disney, and Albert Einstein, to name a few, all struggled with learning disabilities, but they all rose above the labels and accomplished great things. We must never underestimate the potential of our students.